provoking al-Qaeda terrorists, rocket-propelled grenades, drones, and laser attacks. A new 14-page report from former Homeland Security Secretary Tom Ridge says an Inglewood NFL stadium project increases the threat of terrorism because it sits between 2 and 3 miles from major runways at LAX.
There is no one better qualified to talk Homeland Security than our next guest. Former member of the U.S. House, former governor of Pennsylvania, and the first man to lead the Department of Homeland Security, now founder and CEO of Ridge Global LLC, a Washington, D.C.-based security firm. Let's welcome Tom Ridge to MidPoint. Governor, thank you so much for being here.
Ed, it's a pleasure to join you and your audience. Thank you for the invitation.
Your article and the article that talks about the study looking at Inglewood Stadium in Los Angeles in that general area struck a chord with me because having been around sports for so many years, the tens of thousands of people that are gathered in arenas and stadiums every single day, it would seem as if we have got to be aware of this because this is a dangerous gathering. Terrorists must know what's available to them.
Well, thank you for giving me an opportunity. In the interest of great transparency, let's be very clear with the audience. My company was commissioned to do a strategic look at that site by a company that may very well has a competing site. So let's make that very clear.
Okay.
But the fact of the matter is, if you would have commissioned me to do the study on the Inglewood site, I would have given you the same, expressed the same concerns. And the concerns are that commercial aviation continues to be a part of the threat stream that these terrorist organizations look at. It's clear that there have been attacks or attempted attacks directed at the LA airport. It's one of the busiest in the world. It's on a flight pattern. The runways go and there's no alternative to the runways, and they're about 2.3 miles away from touchdown and less than 1,000 feet from the ground. So you take that, and then you take the operational risk associated with flying in and out of airports writ large. I mean, the FAA will tell you the greatest concern, the greatest number of accidents have to do with takeoff and landing, and then you do that close to a stadium and complex that might have 70 or 80,000 people. These are risk upon risk, and the report basically says if you're going to build it there, you better understand from the get-go the number of risk associated with it. There's got to be a better alternative. There's got to be.
Now, on the other side of this, James Butts is the mayor of Inglewood, California. I'd like you to hear this. He looked at your report, and he said, according to him now, and I'd like you to comment when it's done, but here's James Butts saying that the report isn't based, in his opinion, on any fact. Here we go.
That report is so completely bogus, it's not to be believed. It's not an evidence-based report. There is no data to support any of his conclusions. And his wild suppositions that people will have to bear the consequences if something happens, that was naked demagoguery.
Boy, Governor, I heard you start to chuckle even before the soundbite started.
Well, you know, I've been called a lot of things in my life. It's probably the first time I've been called a demagogue. The fact of the matter is, and I think you said going in, never fear the truth. And I would say to the good mayor, who I think had some background in security, it is true that since September 11, 2001, commercial aviation has been a target, and it's part of an ongoing threat stream. It is true that the LA airport, from the Millennium Bomber to the incident where an individual was shot, has been a target. It is true that it's one of the busiest airports in the world. It is true that the flight pattern means that these planes are coming in and out less than 1,000 feet. I mean, it's tough to, he can make up his own facts, but he shouldn't fear this. And I'd say to you, Mayor, and if you and the community and the NFL are willing to accept this layering of risks, then that's your decision. We just think there's probably a better place to put the stadium.
I've got 1 minute left before we take a break and come back. But the mayor's comments and others, Governor, is this just part of the apathy that we seem to have in this country sometime for home security itself? Because it seems maybe sometimes we're just carelessly lazy.
Well, you know, there's a certain level of complacency that you have to worry about. Listen, I don't think we ought to be breathless about the global scourge of terrorism. I just think we have to accept it as a reality that may be a permanent part of the reality of the global community forevermore. And when you go about making decisions with regard to stadiums or anything else, if you are putting yourself in a position where the risk is heightened because of the attractiveness of the target for either operational reasons from commercial aviation or terrorist reasons, then you ought to think twice about locating it there. period.
And I'll tell you what you said there, the attractiveness of the target, that is something that I have heard many strategists say over and over again, and it's certainly not something, we're not being breathless here, but it is something that needs to be considered in the entire conversation. Governor, if you would, please hold on just a couple of moments here, because we're going to take a break, come back, and when we do, we're going to move the conversation overseas. The targeting of American ambassadors, one now injured in an attack that could have been much worse than it really does. What does this say about the international thinking process about going after Americans? And the most dangerous, and sometimes it might even be the easiest to find terrorist, the kind that people are really worried about in this country right now. CIA analyst Lisa Ruth will join us when we come back right here on MidPoint.